The first time Elise touched my arm in a way that made me forget how to drive, her sandal was sitting in my cup holder. It was a tan leather sandal with a thin gold buckle. Very stylish, very expensive looking, completely ridiculous next to the parking pass, 2 loose receipts, and the emergency pack of mints I'd had in my car since January. But that came later. Earlier that afternoon, we were standing in the lobby of the new waterfront hotel, trying to convince a client that his property did not need to look like every other expensive place in Florida. The lobby was open to the courtyard, with pale stone floors, tall palms outside, and enough sunlight coming through the glass to make everyone squint while pretending they were comfortable. Elise stood beside the sample boards in a cream blouse and fitted trousers, holding a brass finish sample in one hand. The client, Mr. Schreiber, had been difficult since 10 minutes after we met him. "I'm not seeing luxury," he said, looking at Elise's design board. "I'm seeing warmth." Elise smiled at him, not a nervous smile. More like she had expected him to say exactly that, and had already prepared a response. "That's because luxury without warmth feels like a place people photograph once and never remember," she said. Nobody spoke for a second. I looked down at my notes because I knew better than to interrupt her when she got that tone. She stepped closer to the board. "The stone gives it structure. The terracotta keeps it from feeling cold. The greenery makes the courtyard feel alive, not staged. Brass details catch the evening light without turning the space into a showroom." Mr. Schreiber folded his arms. Elise pointed toward the open doors leading outside. "You're on the water. You have palms, sunset light, people walking in from the marina. Why build a hotel that could be anywhere?" That was the moment the whole meeting changed. Mr. Schreiber looked around the lobby again. This time, he actually saw it. Not just the budget, the materials, or the construction schedule. He saw the finished place Elise had been describing for weeks. 5 minutes later, he was asking about linen textures for the lounge seating. I wrote down the changes, updated the schedule in my head, and tried not to look too pleased with myself. When the client finally left, Elise exhaled and leaned close enough for me to hear her. "Did I sound confident? You told a man with 3 watches that his hotel had no personality. He has 4 watches. Then you were even braver than I thought." She laughed and bumped her shoulder against mine. That was normal for us. We had worked together almost a year. Coffee runs, long client meetings, quiet jokes during contractor calls. She knew I drank black coffee and hated olives. I knew she forgot lunch whenever she got stressed, so I kept crackers in my desk drawer. None of it meant anything. At least, that was the lie I had been using. We walked outside toward the courtyard so I could check a drainage issue near the back walkway. Elise followed me, still talking about changing the placement of 2 planters. "The larger ones should move closer to the entrance," she said. "It'll pull people in. You say that about every large plant, because large plants are persuasive." I was about to answer when her heel landed on a loose stone. Her foot slid sideways. She caught herself on one hand against the low wall, but her expression changed fast. Not dramatic, just sharp. "Elise? I'm fine," she said immediately. Then she tried to put weight on it and stopped. I stepped closer. "Sit down." I said I'm fine. "You also just made a face like you bit into a lemon. That is a very rude comparison. Sit." She gave me a look, then lowered herself onto the edge of the stone planter. I crouched in front of her while she lifted her ankle slightly. "It hurts?" I asked. "It feels like my ankle has filed a complaint with management." "Can you move it?" She did, slowly. "Yes." "Can you stand?" She tried. Her hand landed on my shoulder before she could stop herself. "Nope," she said. The heat had settled over the courtyard, bright and heavy, and a few workers nearby had started pretending they weren't watching us. I looked toward the hotel entrance. "I'll get ice." "No, you'll get one of those tiny hotel bags with 3 melting cubes in it." "Still better than nothing." She looked at me for a second, then nodded. 20 minutes later, after ice, a borrowed chair, and one very apologetic hotel manager, Elise admitted she probably shouldn't drive home. "I can call my dad," she said. "You can, or I can drive you." "In your truck?" "In your car. I'm not making you ride home in a truck full of permit folders and extension cords." She looked down at her keys in my hand. "You trust me with your car?" I asked. "You organize contractor invoices for fun. I trust you with my life savings." "That is not the same thing." "It's close." Her car smelled faintly like citrus and whatever perfume Elise wore that never seemed too strong. She sat in the passenger seat with her injured foot turned sideways, one sandal removed and placed in the cup holder. I pulled out of the hotel lot carefully. For the first few minutes, she stared out the window. The marina flashed between palm trees and white buildings. Sunlight hit the water hard enough to make it look silver. Then we took a turn, and her fingers settled around my forearm. Not gripping, just resting there. She seemed to realize it at the same time I did, because her hand lifted slightly. "Sorry," she said. "You're okay." She let it stay. At the next light, I noticed a small paper receipt sticking out of the center console. The logo at the top made me glance twice. "Harbor Bakehouse?" I asked. Elise looked down. "Oh, that's my bakery." "I know. You know?" She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You mentioned the cinnamon rolls once. Months ago." "I did?" "You said they were the best in town." "They are." So I went. I looked at her. "You drove across town for cinnamon rolls because I said they were good." She shrugged, but she was smiling. "I was nearby." "Elise, Harbor Bakehouse is not near anything." That made her laugh, and her fingers tightened around my arm again. By the time we reached her father's house, I had forgotten every reasonable reason I had ever given myself for keeping things simple. It was a neat little place with white shutters, potted palms near the porch, and a wind chime that moved softly in the warm evening air. Elise looked at the front door and sighed. "Just so you know," she said, "my dad gets overly excited about any man who brings me safely through the front door. I'm sure he'll be normal. He will not." I came around to her side and offered my hand. She used it to get out, then leaned against me as we made our way up the porch steps. Before she could reach for the door, it swung open. Her father stood there in a faded polo shirt, looking from Elise's ankle to my hand at her waist. Then he smiled like he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "So, you're Miles," he said. "Finally." Elise made a sound somewhere between a groan and a threat. "Dad," she said, still holding my arm, "please don't." "What?" he asked, stepping aside so we could come in. "I'm being welcoming." "You said finally." "I did." "That implies things." "It implies I've heard your coworker's name more times than I've heard the names of some relatives." Elise closed her eyes. I had known her father for exactly 12 seconds, and already I understood why she had warned me. The house was warm in the good way, with open windows, a ceiling fan turning above us, and the smell of garlic coming from the kitchen. Family photos covered one wall near the hallway. Elise was in most of them, smiling in different stages of life, usually standing beside her dad. He introduced himself as Frank, then took one look at Elise, trying to balance on one foot, and pointed toward the living room. "Couch," he said. "Both of you. Elise, sit down. Miles, you're staying for dinner." "I really don't want to impose," I said. "You brought my daughter home safely after she tried to lose a fight with the sidewalk. You're eating." Elise looked up at me. "He means that." "I figured." She sat carefully on the couch, and I found a throw pillow to raise her ankle while Frank disappeared into the kitchen. There was a bowl of ice on the coffee table a few minutes later, along with a towel, and the kind of firm instructions that suggested Elise had been raised by someone who believed minor injuries required a full response plan. "You don't have to hover," she told me. "I'm not hovering. You're holding the ice like it's a fragile business asset." I coordinate hotel projects. Everything is a fragile business asset. That got a small laugh out of her. I wrapped the ice in the towel and settled it against her ankle. She watched me for a moment, quieter now. You do this often? She asked. Treat ankle injuries? Take care of people without making it weird. I looked at her. Is that a rare skill? You'd be surprised. Before I could answer, Frank called from the kitchen. Miles, did she tell you about the note? Elise's head snapped toward the hallway. Dad. I looked between them. What note? There was no note, Elise said quickly. There was absolutely a note, Frank said. He appeared in the doorway holding a wooden spoon and wearing the expression of a man who had no plans to save his daughter from embarrassment. She used to leave little reminders for herself around the house, he explained. Grocery lists, design ideas, things she needed for work. One day I found one on the counter. It had your name on it. Elise pressed both hands over her face. Frank, I said carefully, maybe this is not information I need. No, it's fine, Elise muttered into her hands. Apparently nothing in this house is private. Her father ignored that. It said, Miles is unfairly kind. The room went quiet. Frank seemed to realize, finally, that he might have said too much. He cleared his throat and lifted the spoon. I'm checking the pasta, he announced, then vanished back into the kitchen. Elise lowered her hands slowly. That was not supposed to leave this house, she said. I could have made a joke. Normally, that was my move. Say something easy. Give the other person room to step away from the serious part. But she looked too exposed for that. What did you mean? I asked. Her eyes stayed on the ice pack over her ankle. I meant you notice people, she said. Not in a dramatic way. You just do. I waited. She picked at the edge of the towel. You remember when Bryce messed up the vendor order last fall? He thought he was going to get fired. He was new. He was terrified. You stayed late and helped him fix it. Then you told everyone the problem was a communication issue, instead of making him look incompetent. That was true. Maybe, but you could have let him take the blame. You didn't. I leaned back slightly. She kept going, like she had decided stopping would be worse. You bring coffee to people when they're stuck in meetings. You remember birthdays even though you act like you don't care about birthdays. You always make sure the junior staff get credit in front of clients. And you never make a big show of any of it. Her voice softened. It's unfair, because people get used to men being kind, only when they want something. For a second, all I heard was the fan overhead and the clatter of Frank moving dishes around in the kitchen. My former fiancé had once said I was dependable, like it was a polite way to tell me I was forgettable. Safe, but not exciting enough. I had spent 2 years pretending that didn't bother me. I'm not very good at compliments, I said. Elise glanced up. Why? Because the last person who knew me that well made reliability sound like a problem. Her expression changed immediately. Not pity, just understanding. She was wrong, Elise said. Maybe she was just honest. Maybe she wanted something different. That's a nicer version? It's the accurate version. I looked down at my hands. Elise shifted on the couch, wincing a little as she adjusted her ankle. Steady isn't boring to me, Miles. I looked back at her. It's rare, she said, and it matters. The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because I had been carrying around the opposite idea for so long. That being useful was fine, but being wanted was something else. Something I should not expect. Frank came in with 3 plates and set them on the coffee table. Dinner, he announced, then paused when he noticed the silence. He looked at Elise, then at me. Oh, he said. Elise gave him a warning look. He immediately turned toward the kitchen. I'll be in there, far away, respecting boundaries. We ate on the couch, talking about the hotel and the presentation, and the fact that Frank had apparently decided I was part of the family after one drive across Sarasota. Elise got more relaxed as the evening went on. She teased me about how seriously I took pasta. I told her her father's cooking deserved respect. Frank shouted from the kitchen that I was correct. By the time dinner plates were empty, the sky outside had turned soft gold through the windows. Frank disappeared again, claiming there was dessert. Elise looked at me. "So," she said quietly, "are we going to pretend none of that happened?" "I don't think I can." Her mouth curved slightly. "Good." I moved closer, slowly enough that she had time to pull back. She didn't. Her hand reached for my shirt first, fingers catching lightly at the front of it. Then I kissed her. It was not careful exactly, but it was honest, warm, a little unsteady, and nothing like the polished version of a moment I might have imagined before. Elise smiled against my mouth, and I felt her relax into me. Then Frank called from the kitchen. "Dessert is ready." Elise pulled back and laughed, her forehead resting briefly against mine. "He has the worst timing," she whispered. "I'm starting to think it's deliberate." From the kitchen, Frank said, much louder than necessary. I heard that. I left Elise's house that night with her father, waving from the porch, and Elise sitting on the couch with her ankle wrapped in ice. I got halfway to my truck before my phone buzzed. "Elise, you survived." I stood in her driveway looking back at the warm porch light. "Me. Barely. Your father asked whether I prefer a charcoal grill or gas." 3 dots appeared. "Elise, he likes you." "Me. That was clear when he tried to recruit me into backyard maintenance." "Elise, he does not do that for everyone." I smiled at my phone like an idiot. Then another message came through. "Elise, also, I'm glad you stayed." I stared at that for longer than necessary. "Me. I'm glad I did." The next morning, she sent a photo of her ankle propped on a pillow. A coffee mug sat beside it, along with a notebook, and what looked like 3 different remote controls. "Elise, my father has put me on house arrest." "Me. You injured your ankle, not your freedom." "Elise, he told me I'm not allowed to go near stairs without an adult." "Me. Reasonable." "Elise, you're taking his side already?" "Me. I prefer to be liked by the man who knows where you live." She sent back a laughing face, then a picture of her coffee. "Elise, it's terrible." "Me. That is what happens when you let other people make your coffee." "Elise, are you offering?" I sat at my kitchen table, holding my phone in one hand and my untouched mug in the other. A normal answer would have been something safe. Something about work on Monday, or how she should rest, or a joke that let us both pretend the living room moment had not changed anything. Instead, I wrote the truth. "Me. Yes." Her reply came almost immediately. "Elise, good, because I don't want Monday to make us cowards." I read that twice, then once more. The entire weekend had felt like someone had quietly moved the furniture in a room I thought I knew. Nothing looked completely different, but I kept noticing I had been walking around the wrong way. Monday morning, I stopped at the coffee shop near the office and ordered black coffee for myself and Elise's usual drink with oat milk and 1 extra shot. Write in the comments, how do you take your coffee? Black, with milk, sweet, or something else? I knew it without asking. That was probably part of the problem. When I walked into the studio, the place already smelled like printer paper, fresh paint samples, and the lemon cleaner our office manager insisted made everyone more productive. Elise was at her desk, wearing a light blue dress and flat sandals, her ankle wrapped under the table. She looked up when I came in. For 1 second, neither of us said anything. Then I held out the coffee. "Peace offering," I said. Her eyes dropped to the cup. "You remembered." "I'm apparently unfairly kind." She looked at me over the rim of the cup after taking it. "That was one private note. Your father made it public." "Your father?" she asked. I paused. She smiled. "That's fast." Your dad is hard to avoid emotionally. He makes pasta and asks about grilling. That made her laugh, but there was something nervous under it. I felt it too. We were standing in the middle of our regular workday, surrounded by desks and project boards and people who had known us as coworkers for almost a year. Elise leaned back in her chair. So, what now? I think we tell Naomi. Our manager? Yes. Today? Today. She nodded slowly. Okay. Naomi listened without interrupting. She was practical, sharp, and had the kind of calm expression that made people confess things they had not planned to say. When we finished explaining, she folded her hands on the desk. You both understand the concerns, she said. The hotel project is high profile. Clients notice dynamics. Staff notices dynamics. We do, I said. Elise sat straighter in the chair beside me. My work is still my work. Miles doesn't approve my concepts, and I don't manage his project decisions. I know, Naomi said. And I don't need special treatment, Elise continued. I just don't want this to become a reason for people to question whether I earned my place on the project. Naomi studied her for a moment. Then she nodded. Fair. Keep it professional in the office. Tell me immediately if that becomes difficult. Otherwise, I care about the hotel opening going well. That's fair, I said. When we walked out, Elise let out a breath. You were calm in there, I told her. I was pretending. You were convincing. I'm good at convincing people. I wanted to tell her she did not have to convince me of anything. But we were back in the hallway, and Bryce was coming toward us with a stack of tile samples, so the moment passed. That afternoon, I was reviewing contractor updates when Elise stopped by my desk. Her phone was face down in her hand. Everything okay? I asked. She looked at the phone, then at me. Aaron called. I knew the name. She had mentioned him once months earlier, in the casual way people mention someone they have already moved past. You want to call him back? I asked. No. The answer was immediate. I nodded. Okay. She stayed standing there for a second, like she expected another question. He found out about us somehow, she said. Probably through mutual friends. Do you want me to do anything? No. Okay. Her face tightened a little. That's it? That's it. Elise pulled the empty chair from beside my desk and sat down. The office was quieter now. Most people trapped in meetings or out getting late lunch. Aaron wasn't obvious about things, she said. That was the hard part. He never thought he was doing anything wrong. I stayed quiet. If I said I needed space, he wanted a reason. If I said something hurt me, he asked if I was being dramatic. Every boundary became a debate. Her fingers pressed around the edge of her phone. I got used to explaining myself until people accepted it. I looked at her. She met my eyes. I need you to believe me without making me prove it. There were a lot of things I could have said. Smart things. Careful things. But none of them mattered as much as the simple answer. I do, I said. Something in her face eased. Not completely. Not like a problem disappeared. More like she finally put down something heavy she had been carrying alone. Her phone buzzed again on the desk. Elise looked at it, then turned it face down without reading the screen. After a moment, she reached across the small space between our chairs and took my hand. Not hidden, not dramatic, just certain. The next morning, Elise called Aaron from her apartment. She did not ask me to come over, so I didn't. That mattered. I spent the first half of the day replacing a light fixture on my patio that had been sitting in its box for 3 months. It was a simple job. 2 screws, a ladder, a few minutes with the breaker switch. I still managed to check my phone every 30 seconds. Then, Elise finally sent one message. Elise, it's done. I stared at it. Me, do you want company? Her answer came back right away. Elise, yes. When I got there, she was sitting outside on the small balcony behind her apartment. Her ankle was better, though she still had it resting on another chair. She wore a loose white shirt, denim shorts, and the expression of someone who had just finished a long meeting she never wanted to attend. I sat beside her without asking for details. For a minute, we just listened to the traffic moving down the street and the palm leaves shifting in the hot breeze. "He tried to make it into a conversation," she said finally. I figured. I told him it wasn't one. I looked over at her. Elise's hands were wrapped around a glass of water. "He said he just wanted to understand." I told him he didn't need to understand. He needed to stop contacting me. "That sounds clear." It was. She nodded, but her eyes were still distant. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it. "I kept waiting for him to argue," she said, "even after I hung up. He doesn't get to keep having access to you because he wants an explanation." Her fingers tightened around mine. "No," she said, "he doesn't." That was all we said about Aaron. After a while, Elise leaned her head against my shoulder. The new patio light at my place could wait. Everything else could wait too. Our relationship didn't suddenly turn into some perfect movie after that. We still had work. We still had deadlines, client calls, missing deliveries, and a hotel opening that kept moving closer no matter how many calendars I stared at. But things got easier. Not effortless. Easier. We started having lunch outside whenever neither of us was trapped in a meeting. There was a little cafe near the marina where Elise always ordered something too small and then stole half my fries. "You don't even like fries that much," I told her one afternoon. "I like your fries." "They are the same fries. They taste more organized." "That's not a real thing." "It is when you're a project coordinator." On weekends, we went to the farmer's market downtown. Elise picked out fruit like she was selecting materials for a client presentation, studying every peach and tomato before making a decision. I carried the bags. She bought flowers for her father's kitchen table and pretended she had not done it because he liked them. At my place, she helped me choose lights for the patio. "You need something warmer," she said, standing in front of the hardware store display with her hands on her hips. "It's a patio, not a hotel lobby. Every space deserves a little dignity." "You're impossible." "And yet you invited me." She chose small amber string lights that made my plain patio look better than it had any right to. When we turned them on that night, Elise stood under them with a glass of sparkling water and looked around like she had personally rescued the space from a sad future. "I was right," she said. "You say that a lot." "Because I'm often right." The hotel opening arrived in early summer, on a Friday evening so bright and warm that the water near the marina looked almost gold. By then, the courtyard had been completely finished. The loose stone was gone. The walkway had been repaired. Elise's planters stood near the entrance exactly where she said they should go, full of palms, broad tropical leaves, and flowers in deep orange and soft pink. Inside, the lobby had changed too. Warm terracotta, pale stone, brass details, linen seating, soft lighting. It did not feel like a place trying too hard to impress people. It felt like somewhere people would want to stay longer than they planned. Elise moved through the crowd in a simple dark green dress, talking to guests, answering questions, accepting compliments without shrinking away from them. I stayed near the edge of the room, checking in with the contractors and making sure nothing caught fire, broke, leaked, or made someone call me with the phrase, "quick question." That was my natural habitat. Then, Mr. Schreiber stepped up near the small podium by the bar. He thanked the investors, the contractors, the hotel staff, and finally Elise. "This place has character," he said, looking around the lobby. "That was her idea from the beginning." People applauded. Elise looked toward me across the room. Not because she needed me to see it, because she wanted me to. I smiled at her, and she smiled back. Later, after the speeches and photos and too many people asking whether the brass was imported, Elise found me near the courtyard doors. "Walk with me," she said. Outside, The evening air was soft and warm. Amber lights glowed against the stone path. The palms moved gently above us, and behind us, the hotel lobby hummed with music and conversation. Elise stopped near the place where she had twisted her ankle weeks earlier. The stone had been fixed so neatly that nobody else would have noticed it. She looked down at it, then up at me. "You know," she said, "that loose stone may have changed my life." I smiled. "You had me before the stone. I was just slow." Her eyes softened. "Steady," she said. Then she stepped closer, took my face in both hands, and kissed me. And standing there in the warm courtyard, with her hotel glowing behind us and the marina lights in the distance, I finally understood something I should have known a long time ago. Being steady was never the same thing as being dull. To the right person, it was everything.